You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, you're listening to Mark of the Maker, and I'm Mark Steiner, and this is episode 78 of the show. This will be another interview. We are very fortunate to have some great guests join us for discussion, and we have an excellent one today we think you'll really enjoy. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's make sure we have our usual crew here with us. We have Mr. Michael Birch.
Well, hello there.
Nice. I like it. Mm-hmm. We have Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Hey.
We have Mr. Tom Crine.
Hey, guys.
All right. So our usual panel here, I got the whole gang today, and a special guest. Before we dive into things too far, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Jason.
What's up?
You know what I like? Being able to get all my exotic materials in one place. What do you think about that?
That sounds fascinating.
It is. And the guy who runs it's also a handsome, debonair man. The name of this joint is American Metal Exchange.
George Patagonia. I know that boy.
Oh, everybody knows him. He's an out-and-about sort of guy.
He also makes good ribs.
Oh, he makes the best ribs. One time, he gave me a sandwich with chimichurri and beef, and it's one of the best things I've ever ate.
Zirconium will catch your shop on fire if you're not careful.
It'll catch your shop on fire even if you are careful.
That's right. That's right. What all things does said handsome man offer?
Boy, what doesn't he offer? He's got zirconium, mokutai, zircotai, dark tie, mokume, and damasteel, and just about any other thing you could possibly want.
Does he have animanium?
Possibly.
An inquiry may be required for that particular material.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'd give you a great quote. And as always, shipping would be free.
I think George is the number one abuser of the if it fits, it ships policy at the United Postal Service.
Mm-hmm. He also makes absolutely great Facebook posts all the time.
He's a legend in his own time as far as that goes.
Yeah, only quality content from George. Where can we find George's stuff?
That's amxinc.com. amxinc.com. Once again, that's amxinc.com.
If you ain't buying from him, you ain't buying.
All right. Well said. And as you heard a little upfront cameo from our guest, knife maker, recovering machinist, I'll refer to him as, and also man about town, Mr. Jason Stout, a.k.a. JB Stout. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks, guys, and appreciate you having me
here.
Glad you're here.
Our pleasure, bud.
Yeah, so we're going to dig into the kind of the usual interview thing. We'll go through some timeline. There's some specific stuff for JB and kind of how he came into this and has a little bit different perspective, I think, on some stuff as a result. And that's the beauty of the interviews that we do. A bunch of collaboration stuff, a bunch of machining related stuff. We get into a whole bunch of things as we go here. So Jason, why don't you kind of take us from the beginning, right? Where were you born and raised? Where'd you grow up? That kind of stuff.
Okay. Grew up in a small town called Greenfield, Tennessee. And pretty much basic country type childhood. You know, I was into sports, a lot of baseball, a lot of football. Ever since I was little, you know, as far as I can remember, 5 years old or something, always had a fascination with knives. Just completely natural. Most of the toys and things like that I wanted were either gun or knife related. I wasn't into like stompers, and you guys remember those?
Yeah.
I wasn't really into anything like that. It was either sports or knives and guns. Wasn't much in between. And so that led me to, obviously, you know, just like you hear this story over and over, fascination with martial arts. You know, I still remember Kung Fu theater I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that. Like, I think it was like Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And instead of watching cartoons, I was watching Kung Fu Theater. And so
nice.
Yeah, the next transition from that is, the ninja movies got popular early 80s. I was born in 74, so barely a Gen X. But it's so I really got fascinated with that. At some point, I guess I was probably 9 or 10, the first time I actually walked into a karate dojo. And from then on, I mean, I was hooked, like competing, sparring tournaments, that type of thing, forms, got really, pretty good at it. And my other sports started to suffer, because, I always had coaches that were like, we need you doing this, that kind of thing, because I was pretty good at both of those. So at the end of high school or whatever, I really didn't have any direction. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, and at that time, my age, you had two paths, college or vocational school.
Right.
There was nothing else offered. If you had any other dreams, then that was shit. So
yeah, college, voc-tech, or military. Yeah. Those are your paths. Pick one.
Yeah. At that time, my main passion had become music, and I was in bands all through high school. I play guitar, and somewhere in there, junior, senior year, when it was time to start deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I decided I wanted to be a rock star. And
there you go.
So my dad was a musician. So he was always super supportive. He wasn't, he wasn't like, well, you should be doing this, or, it was like, the boy's good, so
right.
It's like, you might be able to do something with this, cause he had seen, several, local people who, quote, made it.
Yeah.
So I really started hammering on that. And right after my senior year, I actually recorded, my first demo with a band that I was in. And we were stupid. I'm not even going to say ignorant. We were stupid, about how the whole process worked.
Yeah.
So we were sending demo tapes to every record label. And they all got mailed back, because they would, from the lawyer, it would say, we do not accept, unsolicited material, that type of thing. And then we realized, we gotta start gigging, we gotta take this show on the road. And so, started playing a lot of shows, that type of thing. At this point, after high school, I was in vocational school. So and the way vocational school works, for people who don't understand, it's like an 8-hour job. Okay. Or our hours was anyway, and you clock in. So when you get there in the morning, you clock in just like you're at a job. And let's say you have 50 projects. Okay. And during your time there, you have to complete those 50 projects.
Yeah. So
as you're basically learning as you make stuff. Okay. So it's all hands on, I think there's a few months of, mandatory math, mostly trigonometry, which I already had down I walked in there never seeing a lathe mill in my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not making, I didn't know what a lathe mill was. I had no idea. I was just doing this because, hey, you should be a machinist. They make good money. Okay, cool. I'll go be a machinist. Right. So at the same time playing music, I was like, okay, if this thing doesn't work out, I got to have something, to fall back on. So
sure.
That was the only reason I did it.
Do you think, it's kind of an interesting thing about the music aspect where playing an instrument like guitar or anything else really, right? Any kind of horn or anything else, or piano, there's a physical understanding and dexterity that goes with that yes. To me, mentally anyway, fits with making stuff, right? The
Yes.
hands-on aspect of that, because you don't think your way through a song, right? You actually have to do stuff, and you don't do math to play guitar, but you do things that you have to think about things in a very structured way.
Yeah, it's definitely mathematical, and it's muscle memory, and it's literally an instantaneous brain to finger,
right.
To the point where it comes, your hands start doing things that you're not thinking about. So
from your subconscious.
And that way it's very much craftsman. Like, if you ever watch anybody build anything, it's seamless. Like,
right.
They can be listening to a podcast or listening to the radio or having a conversation and do the job blindfolded,
Yeah. Did that come from, did you have that same recognition of that earlier in your life, like when you were a young kid, about hands-on things? Or
Yes, especially with martial arts.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's one of the, and I did some teaching, later on when I, got higher up, and you help out and that type of thing. And the first thing you notice is people don't know how to stand or walk, or without easily fall. You got to learn your balance and learn your center and all that type of thing. I never had trouble with that. Like, I never had trouble with those poses. It's like a lot of karate stuff. It looks like yoga poses, so
right.
Never had trouble with that. So, and then, martial arts wise, I ended up getting into Aikido, which that was a whole new level for me. And, eventually did some, Aikido stuff with swords. And I think that's where my, knife maker transition kind of happened. But, it's back to the music thing. I was basically going to school because I knew hey, if this music thing doesn't work out, I got to pay bills. So it's
right. Plan B, if nothing else.
Plan B. Yeah. And honestly, I didn't give a damn about being a machinist. Like, to me, it was like, I got to learn the skill and do the thing, that, and all day long, I'm thinking about work, practice tonight or a gig that's coming up Saturday, whatever. So during all this, I also had to work, because I couldn't afford to, go to school and, buy musical equipment and those types of things. So, I was working a full-time job as well in a factory, in a lawnmower factory, and for a lot of it. So I guess, fast forward 95-ish, somewhere in there, that's when I got my certificate for being a machinist, immediately went out into the workforce, got that full-time job, music got put on the back burner. And, anybody that's been in bands, it's on and off. And it's like, you run into people and they're like, hey, you want to, start a group, let's do this. So, that kind of started falling away, and, I played this morning, so
right,
that's never left me. But somewhere in there, I started, more real, getting kind of more into knives, and because my main hobbies during that time were, hunting and that type of thing. So that leads to when I made my first knife. And, what influenced that was I was doing, sword stuff, that kind of branched off from Aikido. My instructor, anybody that's taking Aikido, that at some point you're gonna pick up a bokken and you're gonna start doing sword techniques.
Yeah.
So that led me into more live blade stuff. And the first knife or sword that I ever bought that was high, at that time, high quality, was a Paul Chen practical katana.
Oh, nice.
And it was made from 1095. It had a hamon, not a great one, but it was there. But my instructor was kind of pushing these as, this is the basic. This is, the bottom that will work for this class. All your mat cutting stuff, you can do it. It's going to hold up. And I still have it now. I still have that same katana. But that was my introduction really into anything, high quality. You know what I mean? So from the very get-go, I had Japanese influence. That's just what really drew my attention. It was the first one I ever, that feeling when you pick up the blade and it's like, oh yeah, it's like,
yeah,
like I'm going to do something with this. You know what I mean? I had, all kinds of cheap knives, and obviously I went through the whole, cheap survival knife phase and all those things that every kid does. But that was the first thing that I picked up, and I was like, this is where it's at. There's something different here. There's something different about the proportions, the balance, the symmetry, all those things. So that kind of was driving me, but I didn't know where to start. I'm literally machinist brain. Like anything outside of, technique and book, what's in the book, by the machinist handbook. I wasn't an artist really, like other than music. I mean, we played all original music, but I didn't see how you to me, knives and tools were a specific thing that had to be made a specific way. You know what I'm saying? There was I designed, cutting dies and things like that, where it's like, hey, we need to build this die that cuts, at least 8,000 pieces of this, half-inch thick cardboard or 1/8 steel or whatever a day. And it's got to hold up at least to the end of the shift, so the tool makers can come in and resharpen the blade and so on and so forth. So sitting down and drawing something like that, when you have to think about what's practical, I ended up, all these shear blades and stuff, they look a whole lot like a Kiridashi or something, a single bevel, not a zero edge really, depending on what the material was, but basically this single flat bevel, like a guillotine, that's what it ends up looking like. And to me, I was like, why don't they make knives like this?
Yeah. But it's a specific type of design doing that work, because you have a whole bunch of boundary conditions, right? Oh, it's got to fit in this machine. It's got to have this bolt pattern.
It's got to be easily maintained.
Yeah.
The tool maker that night comes in on second shift. He's got to be able to take that thing off easily, throw it up on the surface grinder on a sine plate or whatever the angle is, and sharpen that blade quickly and get it back on the machine and get it running.
Right.
How a lot of times when you build things like that, you have to figure out, how do we keep this thing moving? And obviously we have replacement blades, a stack laying there,
Yeah.
So that way they literally just change the blade out, and then they go sharpen the other one while the machine's running, unless you get down to, we got to make more, but, it's nonstop, So I've always been production minded because of things like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think it's easy to look at that situation and think of it as not really having a big hand in the design because there's a bunch of boundary condition things. But yeah, you have to fit into the machine and have a certain bolt pattern and whatever. But right. There are ways that you can influence how easy or hard that is to maintain, right? And I think that's a underappreciated aspect of what industrial design people do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes on the fly, right?
Yes, it's not all about, we got to make this machine or automated machine or whatever to perform this function. It's about, how do we keep this thing running 24/7?
Yeah.
And almost where it's completely autonomous, where you can pay a guy a low wage, to operate this press or whatever, which that's, not really something I agree with, but,
right.
But anyway, my first knife was, I've told this story on a couple other podcasts. I was working in this shop. It was a small business, but we were what's called a job shop. Basically, it's almost like if you think of a construction crew. We were contractors. So it's like a 3-man shop, and other shops would literally farm work to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we got to have this thing tomorrow.
Yep.
So it was super busy all the time. But I loved it because you never saw the same part twice. You know what I mean? So I got huge experience there. It was just, one of the best things for me. But so anyway, the shop owner had this older friend. He was retired, and he had started, making knives as a hobby. And so one day I'm in the back of the shop, sweating my ass off on a mill, and this guy's back there grinding deer antler. And I am choking. Like, I'm like, what is that horrible fucking smell?
It's funny.
It's funny. I was mad. Like, so I went and told my boss, I was like, hey, you need to get this asshole out of here. I was pissed. I was mad, and he's like, oh, he'll be done in a little bit. He's like, you don't worry about it, whatever. So anyway, the old man gets done, and basically what he was doing, there's a store here in Union City close to me called Dixie Gunworks. And they sell blanks and deer horn and stag. And, I used to go buy stag from them when I first started making knives, because it was still legal, or, well, hell, I don't know. It may not have been legal. But they basically had this big giant box, and you would go up there and just pick out what you wanted, and they sold knife blanks, like pre-made, knife kit type things.
Yeah.
So basically what this guy was doing is just, grinding the deer horn, and then he was sticking one of those blades in it, and, basically just epoxying it in there. It's like a stick tang. And, so he gets done with it. He takes it to my boss, and my boss, Eddie, he comes over. He's like, well, what do you think about that? And I just, I looked at it, I was like, I think it looks like shit.
Wow.
and so the old man, raised his eyebrows, and they was like, huh, and walked off. And then Eddie was like, you didn't, basically scolded me. He was like, you didn't have to be an asshole, whatever. I'm like, hey, you asked me what I thought, man. And I don't know this guy. So, and he said, well, you think you can do any better? And literally, I made my first knife because some guy said, do you think you can do better? And what I did, I went, there was, and I still, as many times as I tell this story, I can't remember the exact knife. I think it was a Strider, and it was, a Tanto, American Tanto. It seems like it was cord wrap, maybe, the handle. But I couldn't tell you the model to save my life. So this was 97, I think, 98, somewhere in there. I think that's right. Anyway, I saw that, that was like, well, that looks cool. So I went back there, grabbed a bar of A2. I think it was 2 inches wide by 3/16 thick. I didn't know shit about proportions or anything, but that's what I grabbed. I grabbed, I grabbed a 2-inch bar, 3/16 thick. I drew a pattern on it, basically like that knife. I traced the shit out of it because I didn't know what I was doing. I put it in the vise on the mill, cocked my head to, I think, 12 degrees, and I milled my bevels. I milled the 2 long bevels. I turned the blade on 45 degrees, and I milled the tip, the Tanto part. Took it, popped holes in it, heat treated it. And I didn't know anything about grinding. I didn't even know there was a specific type of grinder for making knives. I had no idea. And that was my first knife. And so I showed it to my boss, and he's like, damn, that's actually pretty cool. And he's like freaking out and everything. So
poor antler guy.
Yeah. My next poor guy. Right. My next 5 knives, that's how I did them. And then at that point, I found a Gun Digest book or something that had Alan Olishowitz in it. It's like, I remember that picture. I don't have the book, but he's standing beside a lathe, and it's one of the Knives Illustrated books or something.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, oh, this guy's a machinist and he makes knives. Huh. And, you know, that was kind of my first inspiration of, I might be able to do something with this. You know what I mean?
A realization that this is an actual thing.
Yeah, because I was always so practical minded about how to build things. And I was like, oh, well, here's a connection, you know, that makes sense to me. And after digging in and, I'm sitting there looking through this book and then I start seeing these guys standing in front of this weird looking grinder that I've never seen. You know what I mean? I'm used to running, huge surface grinders with 20-inch wheels. And, that to me, that's a grinder. You know what I mean? I'm looking at this. I'm like, what's these belt things? This is stupid,
Or a Blanchard or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Big Blanchard grinders and stuff. So I'm looking at these and I'm like, this seems like it's kind of impractical, or whatever. So, anyway, I start digging into it and I come across Lovelace's book, How to Make Knives. And I think in that book, there's like three, I think Moran's in there. What was the guy that made knives with files, not out of files, but used files? Barney. And that was the next step. I made a knife by filing the bevels. And, so I did that. I did about probably 8 or 10 of those and I was just giving them away. Like family, that type of thing. Then I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it the way these guys do it. I got to get one of those grinders. So I find it's called a multi-tool attachment and it had an 8-inch wheel, 8-inch serrated wheel. And you just stick it on to any kind of bench grinder motor,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I put that on I found a Cummins motor that was like 3,500 RPMs. And that's what I ground my next 100 knives on, was that freaking machine, that fast, with 2x48 belts.
Too bad you couldn't find anything that went a little faster.
Dude, and so, yeah, I bogged the shit, like I'd bog it down, you know what I mean? Because it was only it's like a 1.5 horsepower, maybe it's just 1 horsepower, but it was but that's when I ground my next 100 knives. And those next 100 knives didn't look anywhere near as good as the first 3 I made. You know what I mean? Because I had milled the bevels and all that. But I thought I was doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, because I saw these other makers, okay, this is what you do. You grind the blade and then you got to rub it out. You got to hand rub it, which I was familiar with because I'd been stoning molds and dies. Like I used stones before I ever knew what a grinder was.
Right.
So I was used to doing the hand work and everything. So that didn't bother me at all. And heat treat, I had that in the bag, I've heat treated blocks that are 24 inches long and 4 inches thick, where you got to put it in the oven with a damn crane. So, heat treat was not a big deal to me. I knew the math on that. So had those things down and, people don't even know that I used to mirror polish. They have no idea that I used to do that because nobody knew who I was or whatever.
Right.
And I started selling knives on eBay. For like $25, $50, and mostly what I made was like little 3-inch blade knives. And every once in a while somebody will send, I'll get a picture, one will pop up, that somebody found. So that's how I got my start. And I did a lot of shit the wrong way. You know what I mean? That's the best way I can put it, because I didn't have anybody, there was nobody around here to talk to as far as other knife makers. So I literally learned from books. Like I wasn't even, I didn't know what the USM was. I think I eventually found Blade Forums. I got kicked off of there twice. For saying shit, running my mouth about, because I was really bad about, somebody would be talking about maybe heat treat temps or something like that. And I'm like, that's not right. That
there's a lot of people with a lot of misinformation that
man,
like selling it as gospel truth.
Oh, yeah. Rampant. And one of the things that I got kicked off for, I'll share this little story. I didn't really know anything about forging at all. Like, to me, that was prehistoric. It was like when I saw people, I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, what, you got to using your grill to heat up metal. You know what I mean? Like charcoal. And so there was I don't even remember who the guy was, and I'm sorry, but he said something like,
I'm sorry.
He could tell what the temperature was of the steel by turning the lights out, and like he knew that this color was this degrees within like 10 degrees or some shit. I mean, it was something crazy.
Yeah.
And I just put in big letters, bullshit. Like
making friends fast.
Making friends fast. So immediately I got a message from was it got Spark or something?
Burke, yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, hey, you can't do this kind of shit. You know what I mean? You can't. I'm like, come on, man. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? I'm like, and then of course, once I started studying on a little, I was like, okay, maybe it's not just,
that
bullshit.
man was built right.
There's something to it.
Yeah.
But I still never really went down that path. I was stock removal from day one, literally. But
yeah, I think a lot of people that are familiar with the stock removal part as a beginning point oftentimes see knife forging and all that stuff as like historical reenactment kind of action, right? Like, why would anyone do that? Yeah. So
yeah, because everything I had done, in machining it's based on real science. It's proven. We have machines to test things. I was Rockwell testing, in school. I learned that there was science behind it,
Yeah. That's one of the things we've talked about a little bit before is there are parts of the knife world and certainly in the gun world especially, right? That's where I came into it first, was on the gun side of things, where it's like there's some kind of tribal knowledge threads of information that are out there, right? Whether it's face-to-face or on forums or whatever, and people do stuff a certain way because, quote unquote, that's the way you do it. And if you question that stuff, right, it's like, spark up the fire, we're going to burn the witch, right? It's like, nope, you don't know what you're talking about, noob. And it's like, well, no, there is math here somewhere. And
yes.
And so it's really interesting if you step in the wrong spot on some of that stuff, how quickly it gets crazy.
But it's easy to fall into that. You did something because that's what you thought you were supposed to do. And that's a trap we fall into a lot still.
Yes.
You're like, you feel bad, like, because customers or somebody, be like, well, that's not how it should be done. It's like, why? There's no reason I can't do anything how I want to.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think, look, huge pieces of America were built on the same tribal knowledge thing, right? I mean, and the reality is, I think even, I would guess a good portion of even the machining world, right, are people that don't understand the math or the science part at all, and they do it because that's the way you do it. You just use this tool because this is the tool. That's it. Yep. Well, there might be a better tool. What? Get the fuck out of here. Right. That's the tool you use. And so it's, I don't know, maybe it's a mindset thing more than anything else.
I ran into that scenario in machine shops more than anything else. It's like an ego of ignorance. It's like people who were taught a certain way to do things and they were never taught anything different. So they don't know that there's something different, but they have this ego of, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and you come in here, doing it for 5 years and you get to run the new machine. What's that shit about? I literally had that situation, and it's like, okay, you've been doing this for 20 years. I respect that, but you've been doing it wrong.
Yeah. It doesn't, if you don't learn anything more in those 20 years, then you could be doing something absolutely wrong for 20 years. I'm sure there's something I've been doing wrong for 20 years that I haven't realized yet. Absolutely.
All of us. Yeah.
I think the whole, this gets all into that entire world of apprentices and that stuff. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Is,
oh man,
when people go through that kind of process and you build in, I think it's wonderful, right? I'm not talking shit about that kind of learning, but I am saying that when people learn things and the answer is this is the way it is because it's the way it is, not necessarily this is the way it is because there's logic or reason or data or science or whatever, right? Yeah. Then it becomes really personal, that knowledge, right? And I think that's why you bump into some of the stuff that you ran into, and I've run into many times over the years as well, is it's like people take that shit real personal, right? It's like it's like you're questioning their existence as much as you're questioning the particular way that a piece of metal gets cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a interesting aspect of it, I think.
Oh man, even though I know better, I've taken it personal. You know, you just fall into it whether you want to. It almost, you know, we talk about the apprentice thing. It reminds me, you know, what's the saying? There's no bad students. There's just bad teachers. Well, that's not absolutely true either. There are bad students. There's students who get into it for the wrong reasons, you know,
for sure.
And they're not worthy of, I don't mean to sound like the old guy, but they're not worthy of the time or the knowledge sometimes. I mean,
it's okay. You already told us when you were born.
Yeah, you are the old guy. Just deal with it.
Yeah, I know. I'm in that weird age where my kids think I'm a boomer, but yeah. I'm like, no, I'm Gen X, by God. You know, it's like
right.
But yeah, moving on. I think so the Loveless book was probably a huge turnaround in my whole knife making career.
Yeah.
Because once I saw Loveless and started studying on his process and how he came up with his processes, and then it started making sense to me. I was like, oh, he's using a mill to slot his guards, and he's, you know, I can use my mill. You know, I don't have to. So when I first started, you know, making knives, I'll say conventionally, I just had a drill press, that shitty grinder, and it's hand tools. That was it. That's all I had. I didn't use a mill. I didn't use anything. And then I think I eventually, after I read that book, I went out and bought a Bader B3, and that was my first grinder.
Yeah.
So my designs became limited to what that grinder did. I don't even think I had the small wheel when I first, you know, I couldn't afford a whole lot. And I think I had a 10-inch wheel, and everything I did was based on that 10-inch wheel. So the shape of my handle, like, you know, where your fingers would lay, that was from the 10-inch wheel, where I just literally put it right on the wheel. So all my designs became based around that, except for like the choils and stuff. I would use, you know, round files and that type of thing. It was very limiting, but at the same time, I'm glad I did that because I learned a lot. You know, I learned some hard lessons.
I think, JB, I think that one of the things that a lot of new makers don't think about is designing your designs around your tools. You have to be able to use your tools as much as you can and make your designs so they're the easiest you can on the tools that you have, if that makes sense. I mean,
yeah. And to me, that was so different because as a machinist, you learn to make tools around the design. So,
right.
If you come up with a design, then let's say your shop is limited to certain tooling or whatever. If you're in a position to where you don't have the machines to do like a certain project, let's say you get a project from a company like Rockwell or some big, huge company that's got a lot of tolerances with their stuff and this and that, and you want that job because as an owner, you got to get your foot in that door. So even if you don't have the machines to do this job, you will subcontract to people who do. So when you quote that job, you find those tools. If you don't have this certain type of cutter, you get your ass on the internet and you find that cutter, you know. So I came from that world as to where now I've got these limited tools. What the fuck do I do now? You know, it's because I mean I was literally that linear in thinking. It's like, well, I can't do anything else, you know. So then I started buying more accessories for the grinder. And then,
Yeah, exactly.
So eventually I just came to a realization one day. I was like, dude, you're a machinist. Why in the fuck are you trying to do this stuff by hand, everything? You know better. You know that this is not the best way for you. So stop fighting it. So then I started designing stuff that I've had in my head so that I could use. I started using, tools at work. So I always worked for, people who were like, yeah, you can use my mill after work. No problem. So I would do that. I would stay 3 hours after work and mill up my guards for my Loveless style drop point hunter. And any other milling, I made jigs to do tapered tangs on the surface grinder, made jigs to cut the fitment, where the top of my scale meets my guard, because that's now on an angle. And I was producing way better work, because of that.
Yeah.
So that's when I realized, okay, there's a mix here. There's a happy medium where you can still do some hand work, but some of this other stuff that needs to be fit with precision, do what you know to do,
Yeah. Leverage your strengths instead of using guardrails or limitations as much, right?
Absolutely. So then my stuff started looking decent. It was presentable. I could show somebody that knife and they not be like, what's this big gouge right here in the sky?
Right. Just one quick thing. I think the idea that there are times when you have to figure out how to make do with what you have or find a way to accomplish a certain thing, even when you have limitations, right, as far as equipment or tools or time or whatever, right? Sometimes that stuff, figuring it out the hard way, there's a lot of value in that, right? And and you might not ever want to do it that way again, but the fact that you went through it to figure out how and why, and there's a creative aspect to that I think really benefits the learning process and kind of what you come out with as far as skill set on the other side.
It's called eating grit and paying your dues. And the thing is about that, it never stops. Right. You will have to eat grit and pay your dues the entire time you do this. And if the moment that you think that you've paid your dues and you've went through all that, something's going to come along and humble your ass. And whether it's a mistake you made, or there's so many ways that you can be reminded that, hey, you are far from perfect and you're never going to be that way. So back to the process, fast forward to 2008, somewhere in there, I met this fucking weird guy named Jeremy Horton. And I met him on Blade Forums. And the way we met was there was some guy on there talking about tool steel, which I felt that I was an absolute expert in, which I will still say that now. I'll fight anybody who tells me I'm not. Especially when it came to A2 and D2. Those were my I never made a knife with anything else at that point. If it wasn't A2 or D2, then I didn't give a shit about it. I didn't use stainless or nothing.
The D2 thing really warms Tom's heart as a sidebar.
Absolutely.
It makes Tom happy.
I love A2 also. I've used a lot of both over the years.
Yeah. To me, they're still the best. I mean, obviously there's, we can get into steel nerd stuff, but to me, you can't go wrong. So there was a conversation about, A2 or whatever. And this guy, Jared, he pops in and he's talking about it. And I'm like, hey, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. And he's local, so
right. I
think I messaged him or whatever. I ended up going to his shop, I think, the first time. And I brought some of my work, and of course he was, he was recognized at that time, like, he was going to shows and that type of thing. And I'd never met another knife maker. That's the first time I met a knife
oh wow.
Yeah, I had never held another custom knife in my life. Like I'd never even seen one in person. And so he was the first guy I met, and I brought some of my knives, and he was like looking at them, and he said, and they were loveless style hunters, you know, the pretty much textbook, you know, and he was like, man, these are nice, but there's like 100 guys doing this, you know?
Right.
And that was the first words of truth that I'd heard that made sense to me. And he was like, there's like 100 dudes doing this that are really good at it. And he's like, what do you really want to do?
Yeah.
And that changed my entire perspective on the whole thing. So I think that day I went home and made my first cleaver-ish looking type of knife, heavily milled, you know, that kind of thing. I just went all out on it. And so he also told me about this wonderful place called the USN. And I had never heard of it till then. Like that's that was the first mention.
Yeah.
So I'd go home that night, you know, after I made that knife, and I sent him, he's like, dude, you need to post that. I post it. I immediately get 20 fucking people messaging me. How much is that? How can I get it? And I was like, what? Like somebody, you know what I mean? There's like somebody messaging me to buy my work. I don't, I'm not posting it for sale and waiting 5 days to get a response. You know, it blew my mind. And I was like, I didn't even know what to do. I was like, I don't even know I don't know how to price this, or, I mean, I was really that ignorant about the whole community.
Because your only sales to that point, you said, were basically through eBay or whatever, right? You weren't doing shows or exposed.
Yeah, I went to a gun show in Jackson, Tennessee, where I had knives laying there for $85, and people were looking at me like I was stupid. Like, you know, like $85. Oh my God, you know, they're just freaking out.
Who in their right mind pays $85 for a
knife? Dude, I had paid this guy $30 a sheath to make leather sheaths for me, and I was selling the knives for $85. And anyway,
quick schemes I see.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, dude. I was as green as it gets. You know what I mean? So USN, and I'm still grateful to the USN, no matter what anybody says about how they work. That's if without them, I wouldn't have got the start that I did. I mean, and without some good advice. So
that place has launched many a career.
Oh my God. Yeah. And so, and somewhere along that line, this other asshole named Tom Mayo messaged me, and same old stuff. I made a comment about some guy on there, you know, I love to start shit because, dude, when you work in machine shops with rough people all the time, practical jokes and stuff, that's just normal talk. And I would say stuff that was insulting that I didn't realize was insulting because I was coming from a place of humor. I was being funny, you know. But not everybody got that on the internet. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah, I would say something smart ass and somebody take it, and I'd be, look, man, I'm just joking, you know, let it go. But anyway, Tom sent me a negative rep point, and I was, I was like, what is that? So, and I'm going to say this, and I'm sorry if I hurt anybody, but I didn't know who Tom Mayo was.
Yeah.
I had no idea who he was. So, this guy sends me a negative rep point. I message him back. I'm like, what's your problem? Like, so, he's like, hey bud, you can't be doing that stuff. And he's like, by the way, he said, do you know a woman named Molly Radford? And I was like, yeah, that was my 3rd grade teacher. And he's like, that's my cousin. He's like, do you know I was from Dresden? I was like, no, I didn't, you know. And of course, at this point, I'm looking, who's Tom Mayo? You know, I'm looking at pictures and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's amazing, you know. And so I'm looking at all his knives, and I'm now I'm a Mayo fan. You know, I'm like, oh my, he's the shit. So, so
he's got a local tie, which is cool, right?
Oh yeah, I was like, this guy's from the same place. You know, he grew up in this. Well, he didn't grow up here. You know, he was born here or whatever, but then moved. But
you got family.
Anyway,
it matters.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, what's going on in West Tennessee? You know?
Right.
But anyway, so through the USN, I think that's where I met Blunt also. And me and Blunt may have talked on blade forms a little bit. And so I ended up meeting him. And he came, our stories were almost parallel. Like he had nobody teach him how to make knives, made his first custom knife on his own, didn't have, with nothing but books, had never touched another custom knife, same as me. And we hit it off, you know, and we kind of came up together when we started making folders. We would literally talk on the phone for hours like, hey, man, try this. I mean, I don't know. Like, you know, maybe we need to drill our detent with a number 50 or, you know, it's like, you know, we're talking about drill bits and shit. And like, we, you know, but somewhere on the USN, I sold a knife to Justin Laffer.
Yeah.
And of course he's from Nashville. So he won it was a lottery and he won the knife. And I was like, hey man, I'll just meet you halfway instead of shipping. So we ended up meeting at this place called Parker's Crossroads. And he brings with him a big Pelican case full of custom knives.
Right.
So he's handed me these knives, that was all folders. And of course he's looking at me like, is this guy on dope? Or is it, you know, cause I was so excited or whatever. And, that was the first time I had touched a custom knife in my entire life. So I'm looking at these folders, these Mayos and this and that and the other. And that was my introduction. And I had already started making folders. So I had already started making folders before I ever picked up a custom folder. So I was just happy that I was somewhere close to the proportions. You know what I mean? Like that I was more happy about that than anything, because all these knives I picked up, none of them really gave me that feeling that the katana did. You know what I mean? Like they were great and everything. And I could tell that they were well made and that, you know, mechanically everything was awesome, but none of them really gave me that feeling. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, yeah, it's okay, I guess. So I think it was until, I believe the first one I ever picked up like that made me feel really awesome was a Burke. And I think it was because of the size of it. It was a bigger knife, and I don't remember the model. It was a bigger knife and it fit my hand. And I was like, oh, you know, that's giving me a little tingle, you know. But so after that, you know, I was like, okay, now I know what direction I want to go. I know, now I know where my designs are headed. That was probably a huge turning point for me.
That's a big deal, right? The kind of identifying even a trajectory for a style, right? Not even the specifics of a style, but like what's my thing in this picture, right? Because everybody's different, right? That's why there's collectors for every possible maker, right? Is because people identify with, they get excited about whatever, right? Specific stuff. And, you know, there's people that collect knives that I would never have any interest in owning, right? Just because they're not my thing. And that's okay. Yeah. That's the beauty of this whole thing. And yeah, so it's, maybe that's your trajectory point, right? Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I guess it was a year after that, I got invited to the Redneck Summit. And some of you know what that, maybe not all the listeners are going to know what that is, but
no.
Basically it was what some people would call a hammer in, I guess, but it was a bunch of guys who don't use hammers. So, it was the guys on the tactical side of the show, you know, mostly.
I think Birch is intimate with that. Why don't you explain how that started, Michael, what that kind of came from?
Yeah.
It came from an Arkansas show where they had dollar beers in the restaurant. So it's Chad Nichols, Jody Muller, Steve Kelly, and myself. And we're like, we should get together and do some shit. Okay. And that's pretty much how it started. First couple ones were just like the four of us, and then it kind of grew.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, because the first one I did, there was 40 people there.
Exactly.
Or, or 50, I don't know. And me being green as hell, not knowing anybody other than seeing their pictures and that type of thing, it was overwhelming for me. Like, that was probably the hugest influence that really made me excited. You know what I mean? And another, funny story. I had seen knives from this guy named Les George, and I knew that there was something about him that I was like, I love this dude's work. Like, I don't know what it is, and it wasn't intricate or anything like that. The designs were pretty simple, but I could see something in it that, I loved. You know what I mean? But I assumed that this guy was like 60 years old. I don't know why. I don't know. I had this picture in my head, like this dude's been doing this shit for 40 years or something. You know what I mean? Like, and,
wait, are you saying he's not 60 years old?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know what it was, but so I was standing outside with, I think it was Horton and, Tyler Holden, maybe a couple other people. I don't remember exactly was there. And this guy comes walking down the hill, and everybody's like, say, call his name and everything. And I'm like, who's that? And they're like, that's Les George. And I was like, what? I was like, he's a kid. I was like, I was like, no, I was like, oh my God, I feel like an idiot. You know what I mean? So, and I also met Elishewitz at that, Jim Burke, Jody Muller. I don't think Birch was there. I don't think you were at that one.
I think Pete Carey was there.
Pete Carey was there. Just a who's who of, one after, all these guys, I've been seeing their pictures. So I'm going around talking to them, trying to learn what I can and probably asking stupid questions. And, John Graham was there. And I'm asking people all this stuff, and they're probably looking at my, I did have some folders there, and I'm sure they're looking at them like, this is horrible. You know what I mean? Like, but nobody was mean enough to be like, dude, you're doing everything wrong. But I got awesome advice, and, I ran with it. Like I went home after that and fixed everything that everybody said was wrong, and, obsessed over it, and, come up with new designs and that type of thing. But, the next piece of advice that I got from a maker that changed everything was from Jim Burke. And this was a couple years, about a year later, I think, at the summit again. And he was looking at one of my knives, and he said, do you have an order book? And I said, yeah, I've still got, like 15 or 20 people on it. I'm trying to work through it. And of course, at that time, I didn't do lottos or anything. It was strictly the, order book. He's like, when you get done, you go home and you burn that son of a bitch. And I said, what?
It's a very Burke thing to say.
Yeah. He was like, you don't need it. He's like, you get rid of that order book and you do what you want to do. And I was like, oh, that's allowed, because I'd been taking orders and doing these material combos and shit that I would look at and be like, this is awful. This is the worst looking thing I've ever done, because this guy wants a whatever scale and a bolster or a backspacer that's a completely different material. And I'm getting, I'm about to pass out from looking at it. It's like, I'm getting dizzy looking at this. And, I was making material choices and stuff that weren't my choices. You know what I mean? It was because I thought you were supposed to, a custom knife is what the guy orders for himself, and I accommodated that. And, when he told me,
just because I asked for resin encased pine cone handles, I don't know what your problem is. I don't know why you got to bring this up now.
Yes. Or tortoise shell or, whatever. And, so when he said that to me, and Jim, when he looks into your soul, you you feel it. And he was like, you burn that son of a bitch, and he was like, you do what you want to do. He said, "You're an artist. You're an artist. You do." And that was the first time that I realized this is art. That we're not changing the fucking world with mechanics. We're not. And I know this sounds bad coming from a knife maker who makes his living making knives, but a man can buy a really nice knife for $100 that will probably last him his life, and that, you know, you'll be able to use, abuse, and if you take care of it, it'll last you. You know, the SE3. You know, I always say this to people: the SE3 is the best knife ever made for $100. It'll last you forever if you take care of it. Is that okay to do an advertisement? But
only if we get part of your kickback.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Just send us a check.
I know that may sound weird coming from a guy who makes his living making $1,000 folders, but it's the truth. This is not for everybody. This is not, you know, and it's an art form. It's functional art, if you want to say that. Obviously it's got to function. It's got to cut. It's got to, if it's a folding knife, it's got to lock. It's got to do all those things. But at the end of the day, these customers are buying the art. They're buying you. They're buying your design. And that's what sets everybody apart, is their design. It's like my ultimate goal as a knife maker, and I use these 3 knives because I think everybody, whether you're into productions or customs, know these designs. If you take a Strider, SNG, a Sabenza, and any knife by Emerson, and you lay them on a table, everybody knows who made it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can glance at that and you know who made that knife.
Yep.
That's what my goal is as a knife. That's what I want somebody to look at my knife and go, JB Stout made that knife. No doubt about it. So I think that's the 3 makers on this podcast right now. Every one of you guys, I can see your knife from across a room in somebody's hand, and I know who made it. So to me, that's what we should all shoot for. That's what, if you want your name to go down and people to remember you, it's got to be about your design. Everybody is supposed to make a knife that works. Everybody's, is supposed to cut. It's supposed to do those things. Those are givens. But what really matters is what it looks like. And that's simple. It's like, what's the business, the first 3 rules of business are location, location, location. And that's not true. First rule of business is have a desirable product. Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of knife makers who make really functional, perfect knives, but their designs don't sell. And that's just the way it is. There's nothing we can ever do, but you can't out-function a shitty design.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, that's kind of the interesting part of this is I know sometimes makers in that spot or before they sort of hit their groove, they get frustrated sometimes. And
yes.
And the reality that, like you said, the uncomfortable truth for knife makers of,
right.
You get a really good $100 knife, that it functions, it performs all the function. You get a hell of a lot less than that, depending on what the function is you need. Right?
Oh yeah. Nowadays, for sure.
That the art piece of it, or if people get uncomfortable with art, right, the style piece of it or whatever, that piece is huge. Right? How many examples have we seen over the years of exactly that? Makers that make great work, function well, right? High quality methods to build stuff, and they just haven't hit that sweet spot of either their own unique design language, or they have hit their sweet spot of their own unique design language, but it ain't for everybody, right? And maybe it's not for enough people that it really, takes off.
Yeah, not for enough people that you can make a living.
Exactly.
And I think that's the humbling part of being a knife maker. It's all of us that are doing well. Guys, this is a day-to-day thing. You can wake up tomorrow and for whatever reason, you ain't the hot ticket no more. And you got to be able to either accept that and move on or change your shit. Like you got to either adapt with what's going on or, you know, if you want to do, you know, not everybody wants to do this for a living, and God, don't like,
right,
run away.
Yeah. Not something to force for sure.
Well,
No.
And we also make something that no one needs.
Yeah.
And hopefully
That's my whole point.
it's scary. It's terrifying.
Yeah. We are making luxury items. And if you don't, I think there's those of us who realize that, and you build your, you know, I always say business plan. I don't have a business plan. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing Monday. Like, I'll come out here in the shop and I'll see I'll be like, I need to do these. You know, when I get ready to prepare for a show, then I kind of get more scheduley, I guess. But we make luxury items, and some people just can't accept that. I mean, there's a lot of knife makers who functionally and, what's the word I'm looking for? Process. They put a lot into the knife. You know, they take, you know, where it may take some guy 2 days to make a folder, it takes another guy 2 weeks.
Right.
And you cannot be the person who's like, well, it took me longer to do this, therefore I deserve more money. No, nothing in the world works that way. Every machine shop I've ever worked in, you get more money by getting it done quicker. You know what I mean? Or by eliminating unnecessary processes. And it's all about efficiency. It's all about keeping that fucking machine running, you know? So there's still a part of that in me, but I do realize that doesn't translate well into custom knives all the time. So
yeah, whether it's money or deserve a sale, right?
right.
That's kind of a thing. It can quickly feel unjust, right?
Yeah.
Because your stuff hasn't taken off for whatever reason, or because your market's not super hot.
I totally get it. I mean, I understand putting hours into something and not getting the feedback that you thought you would.
Right.
But that's, you know, that's life. That's everything we do. So, you know, at some point I realized, okay, dude, you've been running CNC machines for 18 years. And that's what you did for a living. You did wire EDMs, every lathes. If you got it, I can run the motherfucker, you know. You know, give me a day, I'll get you some parts. So at some, you know, I kept putting it off. I'm like, man, I'm afraid that if I get a CNC, I'm going to be like a 3-year-old with a hammer. And what I mean by that is, you give a 3-year-old a hammer, everything's a fucking nail, right?
Right.
So I didn't want to, I had to struggle with, I'm sure every maker that ends up moving to a CNC, you have that dilemma. Well, should I separate this and that? Should I do everything on it? Should I? So many questions, so many ways to do it.
I think most of us, JB, have the opposite dilemma as you, because we don't know how to run that shit.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah, to me, it made more sense. Right.
Yeah.
So that is my hammer. You know, that CNC mill, that's my hammer. That's what I know. But even with that, I'm taking a risk, because when my market finds, you know, I've always been upfront about everything, my process. You want to know my process? Give me a call. I'll talk to you for 3 fucking hours about it if you want to. Yeah. So I still had that dilemma, because I'm like, is this going to change my market any? Are people going to look at my work differently? Blah, 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 so on and so forth. But I had to come to the realization, I've done everything I can do conventionally. My brain has reached its peak on manual milling. I have ideas that I cannot get out unless I push that green button. So I was like, I got to do this. So I decided to go balls to the wall with it. Like, so the first thing was, okay, I got to do these milling patterns, and, you know, as far as business plan goes, I have some phases. Like, I gave a live video the other day. I'm fixing to step up the CNC game. I'm going to start doing more intricate things with it. The honeymoon is over. I've figured out everything I need to know with this particular machine and the programming, and done everything that I've done so far is basic shit. And I know some people will look at some things and they're like, "Oh, that's how's the fuck's he?" No, it's all basic shit. I haven't done anything extraordinary, but it's fixing, it's coming. So the first time I did milled bevels, I had 2 other makers message me and say, "That's never going to sell."
Yeah.
Well, fuck you, because I've sold everything that I ever made. And I'm not saying that to be boisterous or anything like that. It is what it is. That's, and I'm going to continue to mill bevels. But don't get me wrong, I still love grinding blades. I'll still, I'm
right.
still going to grind blades. I'm not saying that I'm done grinding blades, or I just bought a $6,500 grinder,
Yeah.
Which is awesome, by the way.
I'm a little bit envious of you.
Oh, dude, it really is different. I mean, I know some people, you see the video, like Alishwitz did some cool videos where, you put like a glass of water on it and this and that. And I was like, okay, that's not a huge deal, but once you start grinding on it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is different. It feels different. It's like it changed things for me. It definitely improved my grinding,
Yeah.
But long story short, I'm going to ride the CNC as hard as I can. I mean, that's because that's what I do. And again, if I wake up tomorrow morning and my people are saying, we're not buying your shit anymore, okay, I'll do something else. That's the way I look at it. I really do have that attitude. And
I think paying attention enough to see that before it really manifests itself is key, right? That's the trick, right? Is paying enough attention to your market, that close enough attention that you can anticipate and start to pivot when you need to pivot, not when it's too late. Because that's, I think, where for makers over time, some of them have gone wrong, right? Is they kind of fall out of favor for whatever reason before they realize that they're out of favor. And then it's a hell of a job getting it back.
Oh yeah. And again, those makers, I'm not going to throw names, that said milling bevels is not going to work out. Guess what they're doing now?
Yeah.
But I would, oftentimes I think some guys like me and Horton and Blunt, that's one of the reasons we all get along together. Sean, a lot of times we do things that are not really normal in the process. And some makers will look at it and be like, why'd you do that? And well, guess what, guy? I have people requesting it now. So it's like when I started doing 60 grit bevels, people, oh God, that's horrible. And okay, well, I'm not selling you knives. Okay. Like, this is what I do. And I have people who like this. And, me and Horton started that as a joke. Like we were doing some of the possums, and he grinds all those. And I said, what if you grind one of these with a 36 grit belt? And he just looked at me and, we had that mutual smile and we went for it. And it came out, doing a plunge grind with a 36 grit bevel and making it look right. It's not easy. It's not, it's not easy. It's hard to keep it from looking like pyramid steps, so and I'm not saying that's some kind of huge achievement or so. I'm not in any way saying that. I'm just saying,
I've never even thought about trying that, but damn, it does sound hard.
Exactly. It's try to match some bevels with a 36 grit belt. And you want to talk about flipping, like, you look at it, you hold it up to the light and you're like, Jesus. And then you got to go back and like barely touch it. And
yeah, stuff happens fast.
Exactly. And, my only tip for that is start way above your choil and, and work that shit in. But, stuff like that, it's fun. If I can't have some kind of fun doing this, then fuck this. Well, I'm not.
It also has to do with the artistic look, I mean.
Yes. I'm going for a certain aesthetic.
It's not for everyone,
Right.
But it's about a look, and it's funny because I'm one of those guys that I want to grind higher. I go to 400 and then buff from there. But when I'm grinding, when I'm hitting that 120, I think they're probably 120 and 60 can be the crispest grinds that I ever get.
Oh,
they look better because you see those coarser contrast lines and stuff.
Yes.
Oh,
and to me, that's what it's all about. It's just the contrast. So I think a lot of people, they might assume that, well, if you're doing a 120 bevel, he's probably doing 120 on the flats. No, I'm surface grinding my flats, to at least 400 or 500. Detents don't tend to work very well running across a 120. Okay.
It's like corrugated metal.
Exactly. I mean, some of that stuff is just ridiculous. And so a lot of people also have this, I guess, a misconception about fit and finish, that somehow they're both the same thing. No, they're not. Obviously your fit on a folder has got to be the shit. I mean, it's got to be right. You can't compromise that. Now, how you finish that knife once all that the internals are done, that's up to you. That's subjective. And so it's like music. Some people are like, well, music is subjective. Absolutely not. Music is objective. If you don't believe me and you play guitar, tune your B string down a quarter step and play anything.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. So it's both. Okay. So it's subjective in the way that there's rules. There's things that have to be done correctly to work. And then it's objective because it's art. Because then it may be correct, but you may not like it. So you got to do both.
That's the style aspect in action, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think you guys have been doing some stuff that flies in the face of convention, right? Like milled bevels. Not that nobody ever did it, right? Other people have done that too, but right, Brian Ty, right? Turned into art form, right? So
yes.
And the Grimsmo guys hugely popular, even with the way they did it. And it's 100% not everybody's thing, and that's okay as long as it's somebody's thing. And if you did it as an experiment and it's one guy's thing and you never do it again, that's okay too.
That right, yeah, and obviously I didn't invent milling bevels. I mean, people have been doing it for one of my favorite. I love RMJ stuff. I love, I think Les did some fixed blades with milled bevels. Way before I got a CNC in my shop. I mean, it's not new, but back to the subjective objective thing. You don't have to be a musician to understand this, I don't think. But like if you take another thing that's been my goal, let's take blues guitar players, okay? And this is something easy for people to look up. So if you take B.B. King, which is a pretty known name, Albert King, and Freddie King, okay? Those are actually not related. Right. 3 guys that are well-known blues guitarists. If you give each of those 3 guys the same chord progression and you give them 6 fucking notes to play, you will know which one is playing what.
Yeah.
The same 6 notes, the same tuning, the same chord progression. Those 3 cats will play 3 completely different things with a completely different style. And to me, that's the same as knife making. It's your individual thing. Like, it goes back to wanting to be recognized. Well, not everybody can be a rock star in that way.
Yeah.
And again, it's not an ego thing. It is what it is. Like, I don't know. It's almost sad in a way. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, some of my favorite makers are not even that well known, but they do this work that's just amazing. You know,
right.
But they just don't have that other thing of, you know.
Yeah, there's a combination of it factor and exposure and other stuff, right?
And luck.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck involved.
Yeah.
My first show was Blade Show 2013. And another person that I'm grateful to was Julie from Arizona Custom Knives. And this was my very first show. I didn't know what to expect. I rode up there with Horton and Marquis. You know, we used to just go to Blade Show together. That was one of our things. The three of us would, you know, ride. So 2013, I've got my folders set. You know, I just get to my table. She's standing there. And I'd only had, you know, I think I might have sent something to them on consignment or something maybe before. She's standing there at my table. And she's like, "What can I buy?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" You know? I was like, "The show hasn't started. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Did you bring something for me to buy?" And I'm like, "Well, I've got, you know, 6 knives. I don't understand what's happening." And so, because I didn't even get my shit out of my bag yet, right? So I'm getting my stuff out of my bag, and I think David Mosier was next to me. And there was a dealer who I still don't know next to me who had some high-end stuff. And so I'm getting my stuff out of my bag, and David, like, acts like he's getting something out of his bag, and he's like, "Just sell her one. Just sell her one." You know?
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I didn't even know David then. And so I was like, "All right." I said, "We'll pick one out." And she picks one. She walks off, you know, whatever. And he's like, "Dude, you need knives on the table." Like, you know, because he, you know, he didn't know who I was or whatever. He's like, "You need to put knives on the table." So that first show, I sold out. I sold all my knives.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's how it was supposed to work, you know? So I didn't know. Like, I'm serious. I was like,
it is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. So as soon as Horton, you know, Horton comes over the table, and he's like, what's going on? I was like, "Dude, I just sold all my knives." It was like the first 2 hours of the show. And he's like, "What the fuck?" Like,
yeah,
you know, he was shocked. And I was like, "Is that bad?" And he was like, No, that's great. You know? So that was, dude, that's luck. That had to do with luck. It had to do with exposure. It had to do with certain people getting knives from me before I ever did a show. All those things have to fall in place. Okay. And
you could draw your own contrast back to the going to the gun show thing, right? With $85 knives that you were maybe going to make $35 on or whatever, right? Or $55 or something. So
I ate shit there. It was, I literally walked away from that like, I can't do this. You know, I'm never going to be this is something else. And I actually, after that, no joke, I think it was about 5 years before I made more knives. Like, it was such a letdown, you know.
People are always like asking me, "Are you going to the gun and knife show?" I'm like, no, I'm not.
Right.
Me and Horton have threatened for years that we are going to buy a table at the gun and knife show in Jackson.
That'd be fun.
For $75. And we're going to advertise it like a week before in our Facebook groups and just see what happens. And, but it's like, I think when we actually did, we were actually seriously thinking about it. That's when COVID hit.
All right. So we had having a great discussion here with Jason Stout, JB Stout, about his background, where he came from, kind of how he got started, his early times in the knife making world. And this conversation went really long. So We're going to go ahead and split it here and turn it into a 2-part episode. So we'll wrap up part 1 here and bring you the second half sometime very soon. We'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. Those folks stick with us, send us a couple bucks every month. We really appreciate them. They're kind of the primary driving force to help support the show. So if you're interested in helping support the show through Patreon, you can go to patreon.com, patreon.com. Look for Mark of the Maker there, and you can find us, and there's a bunch of different levels of support, and if you're interested in that, please do. We appreciate everybody who participates there and contributes with us. We have some good conversations about upcoming episodes and other stuff, so please join us on Patreon. Again, thanks to George Palagonia from American Metal Exchange, amxinc.com. George helps us out as well. We have a great base of folks who are very actively in discussion with us literally every day in our Facebook group dedicated to Mark of the Maker. So if you're on Facebook, go find us there. We have a great chat there with our listeners who share some of their own work. Sometimes there's questions. Sometimes there's discussion about the topics that we hit here on Mark of the Maker. We really enjoy it. We hope you do too. It's very interactive. And if you haven't left us a review on iTunes, please consider doing that. That's helpful for the show as well with getting us on their chart and making us more visible when people go search for Knife Podcasts. So that's it. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account, at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram, at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.